ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول كل بدعة ضلالة.
And it is not for a Muslim to eat with unbridled desire, just sitting there and eating and eating and eating up until he fills the whole of his belly. Rather, he eats with a light eating. I know the habit of sisters, more women than men, even though men fall into it also, that they will not eat for the whole of the day because they know that they have a meal in the evening at a walima. Then when they attend the walima, they do not leave up until they have only enough strength to carry them to the car. Eat and eat and eat, and they don't stop. And this habit is a poor habit and a bad habit to have, because this is unbridled, satiation, or that you just eat and eat in a manner that has no limits. This is not from our way. This is not from the manners of Islam. And these are not from the habits that we inculcate or teach to our children and our daughters. And this is why you find generally in communities that women, that they quickly become overweight. One is because, of course, they're having children. Secondly, because they don't concern themselves with what they're eating. They eat in an unbridled manner. You need to be from those who follow the manners of Islam. Sufficient for the son of Adam is enough morsels of food to keep his back upright. Hadith of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Enough for the son of Adam is enough morsels of food to keep his back upright. We eat to the extent that we stoop our backs, that the belly is pulling because we eat so much that the belly pulls our backs forward. Our backs ain't even upright. They're bent out of shape because of the quantity of food that we consume. And we are living in these societies now where there is an obesity epidemic. This has never happened in the history of mankind to our knowledge. Never in the history of mankind. In the history of mankind, it is unheard of. And Allahu A'lam, that there has been an obesity epidemic. They say yes, there is an epidemic because of an illness. There is an epidemic because of this infection or whatever. Yes. Epidemic in terms of eating, that there is too much food. That a person enters into a state of obesity, that obesity is spreading amongst the people like a disease. Because we don't control ourselves. And then we complain there is not enough money. Look at that, subhanallah. In the early times, in the nations that came before, they used to starve and go hungry because there wasn't enough food. They had something to complain about because they used to watch their children, malnutrition spread amongst their children, and go hungry. They used to have that amongst them. They used to have something to complain about, and they never complained. They get up and go and work the fields and bring the food. They used to call them hunter-gatherers, right? Go out and hunt, gather the food, bring it to the family. Nowadays, food has reached a level whereby there is no limit. Small amount of money buys you a lot of what they call food, even though it is predominantly what is considered today as junk food. Very little in nutrition, but very sugary and starchy, filled with carbohydrates that do not really give you anything except sugar spikes and diabetes and other things. But there is plenty of that. So our brothers, our sisters, predominantly sisters, because for some reason they have this sugar thing with them, women generally more than men, that they will eat and they will eat and they will eat, and then they will complain that they're poor. So they are given and they are given and they are given and they take and they take and they take and they still complain, we are poor. So not only do they eat and they take that which Allah gives them, then they complain as well on top of that. Sufficient morsel of food, my sisters, for you. You know, one of the habits that we have lost in our times is the habit of feeling hungry. Because that was common amongst all of the nations, not just the Muslims, amongst all nations of Europe, of Africa, Middle East, Asia, the Americas, everywhere. Everyone got into the habit of feeling hungry sometimes, because that happens. They're waiting for the crop to grow. So they're watching the food because they don't want wastage. So they would eat amount and they would spend part of the day hungry. What we mean by hungry here is not starvation, meaning that there is a want, that there is a wanting in them. Just like, for example, in the month of Ramadan, you're not starving, but there is a want within you that you are left wanting. That feeling of wanting and being left wanting is a good feeling to have, because it reminds you of Allah. That now you realize the bounties and the blessings of Allah because you're wanting. Say, subhanallah, imagine if this was to continue for 3 or 4 days, what would I do? So we thank Allah for His ni'am. But if you are stuffing yourselves from morning through to noon, through to afternoon, through to evening, through night, and you are never left wanting, then how are you going to show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Just eat and eat. Then you eat because you've reached a stage where your bodies now have become larger. So now when you eat, you say to yourselves, well, I can't eat on the floor anymore because, my back hurts when I'm sitting on the floor, or my legs hurt why? Because now this fatty tissue, this adipose tissue, which is the fat and the cellulite upon our bodies, they prevent us from sitting on the floor. So now the children, your 7-8-year-olds, are sitting on the floor. You have to sit up, because now you can't eat sitting down, because you won't get enough food into our bellies. We won't get those shovels of food that we want to put into our stomachs. So now we have to sit up. Then when we're sitting up, we realize that actually if I sit up straight, unless I'm leaning back, I can't get the food into my belly. So then you lean back. This is bad. Spend a part of the day wanting. Leave the food, eat. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, continuing with the hadith, and if you have to eat more, then 1/3 of your belly with food. How do you know you filled 1/3 of your belly? Because you stop whilst you're still you know that you could eat more and you're slightly wanting. So how do you make up for that want? 1/3 of it is water. Done. Then 1/3 remains for breathing. We have entered into bad habits. That's why we're sluggish. Our minds are slow. That we don't have that energy that we had when we were 10 and 11 and 12. How come? You have some scholars, ulama. Sheikh Rabi, Hafizahullah, every time we meet him, and we go, a few times a year, at least twice a year, and we see him, the man is 90 years old. And he's energetic, his mind is healthy, vibrant. And when we've eaten with him a few times, I can see why. The man eats, Hafidhahullah ta'ala, enough just so that his back is upright. And the type of food that he eats, you never see any of the normal food that you find people eating in the takeaways and so on. No. You see him eating lentils or something small, something basit, some salad, some olives. And you see them 90 years old, Hafidhahullah ta'ala. And other than him, Sheikh bin Baz was likewise. Ibn Uthaymeen likewise, Al-Albani likewise. You see those men, Sheikh Muqbil even though Sheikh Muqbil and Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, eventually they passed away in their old age, of course, but they died of cancer. But nevertheless, you look at them, minds energetic. And even if you look at women in Africa, and Africa is a good example, better than most countries or most continents, because those people are still wanting, but you see their women folk energetic. walking for miles and miles and miles a day just to get some water. Because they are given by force, because their means are restricted. So they are forced to only eat enough to keep their backs upright. But wallahi, you look at them, they're happier. In certain parts of Asia, they're happier. Because they're healthy. When they die, eventually of old age and whatever, at the age of 90 or more than that, they don't die with arthritis. Most of them. They don't die of cancers. They don't die of diabetes. They don't suffer for 15, 20, 30 years of their life up until eventually, just like that old car that is traveling and the wheels break down and the engine goes and the oil, the engine dries up and the gearbox goes and inside. No, these are people who live a full life up until old age. Eventually they die in their old age. Some of us, we reach the age of 40 and we begin to die already. Habits of eating. Why? Because we don't maintain them. If only you followed the sunnah.